Hello, everybody. My name is Broke Boy, and today I'm going to do a video about something that I don't necessarily talk that much about on my channel, though I have certainly talked about it, and that is, of course, tennis. Now, of course, I've made a couple of videos specifically about tennis, and more specifically about Novak Djokovic, who I believe to be the greatest player of all time. And for an explanation on that, you can see the video that's specifically talking about that. So I'm not going to get into that here. But I have been playing tennis for about 13 years, and I have been following the sport of professional tennis for the past few years. And some of you may say that that doesn't seem like a very long amount of time, and that may be the case, but I have done a lot of research about what has gone on in the professional tennis world over the past 20 or so years. So I do know what I'm talking about here. It's not like I don't know what happened in all of the 2000s and 2010s. In fact, I'm able to recite all of the Grand Slam champions in order and finalists from basically 2003 onwards, once the Federer era started. So what I mean to say is I do know what I'm talking about here. Of course, it's not necessarily very difficult because it was dominated by three players. But what I just mean to say is that I have done research and I do know what went on in these past 20 years. So I do know what I'm talking about here. I have. It's very rare for me to meet someone in person who knows even close to what I know just in terms of pure knowledge of what happened about professional tennis. The people who would know more than what I know are basically people who are like tennis coaches just because they know what happened in 80s and 90s and stuff like that. And I wasn't even alive because I'm still young, but I do know what went on in the past 20 years. That's what I'm saying. And I don't really need to know that much about what happened before that for what's going on right now. I know a little bit, but not nearly as much as the 2000s. And that's not really before that is not does not really. Of course it's all related, but it's not as related to what's going on now and in the current year, 2024, soon to be 25, in the current tennis world. So I know, like, just a little bit, like there's Rod Laver, Jimmy Connors, Borg McEnroe, and stuff like that generally, but I don't know it as much detail as I know since 2003, where I know pretty much all of the major things that went on since then in the tennis world. So basically, what I mean to say is I do know what I'm talking about here. That's what I mean to say. And this video, as the title says, is going to just be my sort of predictions for the next the next tennis year, which is of course 2025. And it's probably going to be a pretty short video because many of you will already know the answer to it, you know, and have basically the same prediction because it's not a bold prediction at all. And tennis is not always about making bold predictions because let's face it, the favorites are the favorites for a reason. And it can be hard to take them down. Of course, it can always happen, but usually the favorites will win, especially if they're like really like actually consistent players and you've seen them do it multiple times. You're like, okay, to beat this guy in a big match is not going to be that easy. And then you see that's why they're usually going to win. So I'm going to give my quick predictions. As we all know, the four biggest tennis tournaments that we have on the tour are the four Grand Slams, which are held every year. We have the Australian Open on hard courts, the French Open on clay, Wimbledon on grass, and the US Open again on hard courts. So these are the biggest titles in tennis, as people who follow tennis know, obviously. And so I'm going to give my quick predictions on who I think will be the champions for these four Grand Slams in 2025. And of course, I shouldn't say very difficult, but it is difficult to predict. Tennis is a difficult sport to predict because you never know. Like, someone can always get injured, someone can just get sick, someone can have a bad day, someone can be in a bad mental state, someone can just be not locked in, and that's all it takes. And then someone else can have a really good day, and then they end up playing really well, and they take them down, and that can be all it takes, and then they're gone, and then you get some random guy going much further than you expected. This happens all the time. Of course, that's what the sport of tennis. It can be very unpredictable at times, even though of course we have favorites. Anything technically can happen. You can never truly know what to expect. I mean, a lot of times it does seem like a foregone conclusion, but you know, at any given point, theoretically, it's not like it's impossible for this player to win. It usually doesn't feel like that. I mean, it perhaps often does feel like that, but you know what I'm saying is, you know, there are upsets and unpredictable things that always happen, even if many times it can be somewhat easy to predict just because of how big favorites are in comparison to their opponents. But you who follow tennis, you know what I'm trying to say here. So I'm going to try to predict the Grand Slam winners for 2025 real quick, and it's going to be a pretty boring video because a lot of you will kind of know what I'm going to say, and that's simply where we're at right now. It's you don't really know who else to pick to win Grand Slams aside from these two players. And the two players are probably pretty obvious at this point, which are Jannik Sinner, who is the current world number one and has been near unbeatable in this season. Nearly. I mean, he did only win 2 slams, but he lost only 6 matches. He won like 73. So that's pretty good. That's close to unbeatable. Of course, you can never be truly unbeatable, but he had a very extremely good season in terms of winning percentage and titles and basically everything. Became world number one, of course. So we have that. And the other player is, of course, Carlos Alcaraz from Spain. And of course, this is a very boring prediction because people already know that these guys are the future, basically the present now, and they've already won 6 slams between them, and almost all the other players have not even won a single one. And it seems very hard to imagine both of these guys losing in a Grand Slam. That seems very difficult to do until maybe a new star rises up who is just younger than both of them and hasn't won anything at the moment. It seems very difficult for both of them to lose in a Grand Slam. It happened last year, of course, because we had Novak Djokovic. But now it looks like he's too old and decrepit to win any more of these Grand Slam titles. And if that's the case, then it seems that they're going to continue to be swept by these two overpowered protagonist type characters, which are, of course, Sinner and Alcaraz. And let's just look at the Grand Slams this year, right? Australian Open was won by Jannik Sinner and his maiden Grand Slam title. Who is going to stop him there? He basically destroyed his opponents in the first 5 matches. He didn't drop a set until the semifinals. So those first 5 opponents didn't even get close to challenging him. So it's hard to see him losing before the semifinals at next year's Australian Open, which is already in like about a month or so. It's hard to see that. He didn't lose a single set. And he could be even better than he was before. That was when he was just starting his magnificent year. Of course he can be rusty for not playing for a little while, but the first couple rounds they'll ease into it, and those first few opponents, they can't really challenge him. They're not really going to do anything against him most likely. So it's hard to not see him. It's hard to see him not reaching the semifinals at the very least, and most likely winning the title, which I predict he will do. I predict that Jannik Sinner will defend his 2025 Australian Open title. It just doesn't look like there's anyone who can really stop him on hard courts, besides one person, which is, of course, Alcaraz, because as we all know, Alcaraz went 3-0 against Sinner this year, and some people say, "Oh, Sinner won in the sixth King Slam in Riyadh." Okay, fine, 3-1, whatever. But that's not. It's not an official ATP tournament. Of course, they won $6 million, but still, it doesn't technically count. But even if you want to include that, sure, he still went 3-1, right? So basically, he can't really lose to anyone else on hard courts. I believe his only other loss was Andrei Rublev in what is it, Montreal, I think it was Montreal. He lost to Rublev there. That was it was a bit of a strange match. He didn't look to be 100%, right? But no excuses, of course. Let's just say, okay, so he had one loss to Andrei Rublev on hard courts the entire year, and he lost to Alcaraz 2 times. I believe those were his only losses on hard courts in the whole year, if I'm not mistaken. Let's see, he had six losses in the year. 3 of them were against Alcaraz. Then it was Rublev, Medvedev, and Tsitsipas. So that's it. I believe he only lost to Rublev and Alcaraz on hard courts this year. So who can stop him? It doesn't really look like people can do that on Grand Slams and hard courts. Just look at the Australian Open he won, and look at the U.S. Open he won this year. He barely got close to losing. Barely. There's one exception. Like I just said, he went through the Australian Open, first 5 matches, didn't drop a single set. Then he played Novak Djokovic in the semifinals. He destroyed him the first 2 sets, and then Djokovic barely won that 3rd set. Miraculously, I don't even know how he did that. And then he somehow became the first person to take a set off of Sinner at that year's Australian Open. He barely won that 3rd set. Somehow. But then the 4th set, he's done. 6-3, and he's out of here again. And he couldn't generate a single break point, of course. So he's not even the best returner of all time. Of course, he's old now, but still, he didn't even get close to beating him. The only person who got close to beating him, we will say, in this year's Australian Open was Daniil Medvedev in the final. When, of course, we all know he went up 2 sets up in the lead, and then Sinner just swept the next 3 sets. It was not as bad as in 2022 when Medvedev had those 3 break points to go up a break in the 3rd set against Nadal. Sinner, and then he did a bunch of stupid shots, and I don't want to talk about that. But this one, Sinner, he stayed in there, and then he outplayed him for the last 3 sets, basically. He just purely outplayed him, and Medvedev, after being on the court for like 20 hours, also got tired. But again, no excuses. Let's say, taking it at face value, Medvedev was the closest one to beating him. He was 2 sets up in the lead. But can Medvedev beat him now? No! He gets destroyed against him. He hasn't won against him. The only win against him this year was at Wimbledon, right? At Wimbledon, when he defeated Jannik Sinner in the Wimbledon quarterfinals this year. But we're talking about hard courts right now. Can Medvedev defeat Sinner on hard courts now? No! He has gotten destroyed. He has gotten destroyed the last few matches, basically. He has not even gotten close. After that, he has gotten destroyed. Look at their hard court matches after that. They played in the Miami Open in March or April or something like that, in the semifinals. He destroyed Medvedev. He won like 6-1, 6-2, something like that. 6-1, 6-1, 6-1, 6-2, something like that. And then they played somewhere else. They played in Shanghai. He won like 6-1, 6-4. In the Riyadh exhibition. I know it's an exhibition, of course, what I just said, but still, they were still at least kind of trying. 6-love. You don't lose 6-love. 6-love, 6-3 in an exhibition. Absolute massacre. I mean, it's not like he wasn't trying at all, right? He can't do anything against him anymore. He basically can't do anything. Played him in the ATP finals again. What is that, like 6-4, 6-3? He just can't do anything to hurt him. He just can't do anything anymore. Now that before he used to defeat Sinner, he defeated him like 6, 7 times in a row, and now he's losing the head to head like 8-7 or something like that. Before, because he would just keep getting everything back, and then Sinner would screw up. But now Sinner became much more consistent, and now if he's not going to screw up, he's just going to overpower Medvedev in the points until he just ends up creating the space to hit a winner, or he just hits too hard, and Medvedev is the one who messes up because he's the one who's hitting softer, and he's just getting these bombs over and over from both sides with not that many mistakes. So he's going to lose, and that's why he's lost like the past like 6 out of 7 matches or something, and most of them on hard courts. Played him on the U.S. Open. He did not get close to beating them. That was some weird match. It was like 6-2, 1-6, 6-1, 6-4 or something. But he did not look like he was even close to beating him. Of course, he lost his 3 sets 6-2, 6-1, 6-4, and then he just somehow won the second set like 6-1. It was a weird match. But he did not look like he was close to beating him at the U.S. Open. So do I count on Medvedev to beat Sinner on a hard court? No. So then who is going to stop him at the Australian Open? Nobody. Nobody can stop him. Look who beat him on hard courts this year. Again, going back to that. Rublev and Alcaraz. Look what he did to Rublev in the Australian Open this year. Straight sets. Grand Slams, different story. He's not even getting close to Rublev is a quarterfinal specialist. We all know this. So that guy can't even, just like by the laws of tennis, it's impossible for him to go past the quarterfinals. So is he going to beat Sinner, which would most likely put him in the semis or final or something? No, he can't. It's impossible for him to go past the quarterfinals. He just can't do it. That's like one of the laws of tennis that we have. This guy cannot go past the quarterfinals for whatever reason. So will Rublev defeat Sinner in Australian Open? No. So the only person who has a chance is Carlos Alcaraz. But Carlos Alcaraz will lose in the Australian Open before he gets to face Sinner. That's what he did this year. He lost to Alexander Sasha Zverev in the quarterfinals. So I predict that even though Alcaraz, if he were to get to Sinner, he can defeat him. He is basically the only one who can do that. If he were to get to Sinner, but he will lose before facing Sinner because he is more vulnerable to these other players like, Thomas Mahach and Zverev, and just some random guy. I don't know, but he's not as consistent. He's not as consistent as Sinner on hard courts. So I predict he will lose like 1 or 2 rounds before getting to face him at the Australian Open. So I think Sinner will defend his Australian Open title. There's just no one I can see that can actually pose a threat to him at the current moment. So that's my prediction. Maybe I will be wrong. I would be happy to be proven wrong, but I just can't really see anyone doing that right now. Then we go to the second slam, which is the French Open, or Roland Garros, as it is also called. And who will win that? I believe that Carlos Alcaraz will defend his title because, he's just the best on the surface at the moment. And he's not a clay specialist. He's not Nadal, of course. But do we have a better person than him on clay? I don't really think so. Sinner is actually not far off, but Alcaraz is still better than him on clay. He defeated him this year in that Roland Garros semifinal. So who else can challenge Alcaraz on clay? Nobody. Tsitsipas, he owns him. Zverev somehow got to 5 sets, but he was not close to winning that match. He lost the last 2 sets of that match 6-1, 6-2. The fact that he got up 2 sets to 1 is a miracle, quite frankly. So who can challenge Alcaraz on clay court? I don't see it. So I just don't see anyone who can do that right now. So I have Carlos Alcaraz winning the French Open for the second time. And then we go to the Wimbledon, the grass courts. I have Carlos Alcaraz to win Wimbledon in 2025 because I don't see anyone who can challenge him. Let's face it, guys. Who knows how to play on grass courts? Who knows how to play? Nobody. They're except for Djokovic, but he's too old now. We saw what Carlos Alcaraz did to Djokovic in this year's Wimbledon final. He destroyed him. So can Djokovic defeat Alcaraz there? No. He lost 2 Wimbledon finals against him already. He cannot defeat him. He's too old. He cannot defeat him. In fact, he can't even, well, no. He can win a Grand Slam with an insane amount of luck. But I will never put him as the favorite again. Not with these two beasts, Alcaraz and Sinner, who are just overpowered. As long as those two are still in the draw, then I don't see him winning. I don't see him doing it. He played both of them in Grand Slams this year, and he got whooped. So he definitely can't defeat both of them. That's for sure. And it doesn't even look like he can defeat one of them. He didn't even have a chance in the meetings in the Australian Open when he faced Sinner, in Wimbledon when he faced Alcaraz. He got destroyed both times. So I don't see how he's going to be able to win another Grand Slam unless somehow they both get knocked out. But like I said, that doesn't look very likely. They would have to have like some other guy would have to like peak, and 2 other guys would have to peak to take these guys out. Because I don't see one guy taking both of them out. That would be insane. 2 guys would basically have to peak, and who are those people? Where are they? Where are they? We don't see them. We don't have anybody who's challenging them in the Grand Slams at the moment. Medvedev, he's getting dog walked by them, and Zverev, it is impossible for him to win a slam. Like he won't even get to them at this rate. He'll just run into Taylor Fritz again, and then he'll lose. And then Taylor Fritz will lose to Sinner and Alcaraz. He can't do anything against them. So who is going to take them down? Nobody. There's nobody. Somebody step up, please. We need like some random young kid, because Justin Engel or something, because there's no one who can do it. They're not giving much hope. So who's going to defeat Alcaraz on grass? Nobody. Nobody even knows how to play on grass. There isn't anybody who like Sinner. If you saw him in that match against Medvedev, to be frank, he was pretty bad. I don't know what it is. Maybe like he's just not experienced on grass, even though he just won the title in Stuttgart or whatever it was. But it didn't look like he was very good, at least, or something was wrong with him in that match. He didn't look very good. He was just like spraying forehands and stuff like that. So will he defeat the grass court beast Alcaraz, who won 2 Wimbledons in a row already? I don't see it. If Alcaraz can defeat him on his preferred surface of hard courts, how's he going to defeat him on grass? Well, Alcaraz is even more skilled than him. I don't see. Oh, well. Okay, fine. Like, he did do it in 2022, but since then, Alcaraz has won 2 Wimbledons, and Sinner has not looked as good on grass. So it looks like Alcaraz has gotten a lot better on grass since then somehow, because he improves so fast. So fast. But I don't see it right now. I don't see it. And the closest someone got to defeating Alcaraz in the Wimbledon this year was Tiafoe. Will Tiafoe win a Grand Slam? No. Tiafoe, the clown, he'll never win a Grand Slam. And can he defeat Alcaraz? Well, let's see. He didn't do it this year. The next year, he'll probably lose to another clown, as he puts it, of course, because he was losing to clowns. He'll probably lose to another clown. He won't even get to Alcaraz. So, do I count on him to take out Alcaraz? No. I don't count on his mentality. I don't count on his consistency. So who will take out Alcaraz? Nobody. And then we get at Wimbledon. So Alcaraz will win Wimbledon again for the 3rd time in a row, because nobody can stop him. And now we get to the US Open. And that will be won by, of course, Jannik Sinner. Because like I just said, no one can stop him on hard courts except for Alcaraz. But Alcaraz will lose before reaching Sinner, just like he did this year. He lost to Van de Sloop, or whatever his name is, Botic van de Zandschulp. I don't think he will lose quite that early next year in the US Open. Maybe he can reach quarters or semifinals, but he will probably lose whatever round he is due to face Sinner in. He will lose like the round before that, and then Sinner will win the title easily, just like he did this year. No one even got close to beating him at the US Open. He lost like 2 sets in the whole tournament. The first one was in the first round because he was just warming up or whatever. So he played terribly for like the first set, and then he went down in like the second set, and then he just destroyed the guy, McDonald. Since getting the break back in the second set, I was watching that match. I saw him like, oh, what the heck is going on? He's down 6-2, 1-love. But of course, I'm not saying like, oh, he's gonna lose. As soon as he went up the break in the second set, I said, oh, it's over. And it was. Of course, it's over. The next two sets like 6-2, 6-1, 6-2 or something. Destroyed him. After that, he didn't lose a set until Medvedev in the quarterfinals in that weird match again, like I was talking about. He lost the second set like 6-1 or something like that. But Medvedev did not get close to beating him, and Medvedev can't do anything against him on hard courts. Useless to him. So, in the other sets, 6-2, 6-1, 6-4, Medvedev did not get close to beating him. Then he sweeps the semis in the final without losing a set. So who's going to stop him? Nobody. So, I predict that in the 2025 season, the 4 Grand Slams will be won by exactly the same 2 players and in exactly the same distribution as they were won this year. For the US Open and Australian Open, we will have Yannick Sinner as champion, and for French Open and Wimbledon, we will have Carlos Alcaraz as the champion. And if I get proven wrong, I won't be shocked. I mean, depending on how it goes down, I might be kind of surprised to see who is going to step up and take these guys out. Really, I don't know who it will be, but I would really love to see that happen. I would love to get proven wrong, because I would love to see like someone else win besides these 2 guys. Even though they've they just started their dynasties, as we can call them, but to see someone else win would be, I think, pretty cool. But it's hard to see it right now. If we just look at who stopped. If we look at the hard courts, it looks like no one can stop Sinner except Alcaraz. If Alcaraz were to somehow do that, then, of course, it would just be, oh, okay, Alcaraz won another Grand Slam. Then at the French Open and Wimbledon, at the French Open, are both Sinner and Alcaraz going to get knocked out? It took Alcaraz to knock out Sinner. So Sinner can go pretty far in the French Open just to get stopped by a beast like Alcaraz. I don't even know who else can stop him. Zverev, maybe he could have beaten Zverev in that final. That semifinal could have decided the winner of the tournament. So it's hard to see both of them losing in the French Open. In Wimbledon, Alcaraz is like a beast there. It's hard to see people taking him out. Sinner, he lost to Medvedev, so I don't know, but it seems like he'd be even better now. That was a bit of a weird match. But again, no excuses, Who knows? But Alcaraz is such a beast in Wimbledon, it's hard to see him losing. Just losing at all. But I suppose it has to happen, eventually. But let's see. Again, if I get proven wrong, I'll be very happy. But for now, I just don't know how else to predict the season to go other than exactly the same as it went this year. So those are my predictions for 2025. And thank you for watching.